This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Well, welcome to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We are back here on the ranch. Actually, we haven't even left the ranch. Thought about leaving, given everything going on here with COVID. Some of you who track me on social media, you know that we have, right before COVID started, we actually procured and upgraded the mobile studio. So the 45-foot Prevost bus, entertainer bus, is currently in Elizabeth City, North Carolina for its upgrades. Hopefully, I'm going to actually be able to go out there in about a couple weeks, pick that up, bring it back, and then we actually will be able to hit the road. So even with COVID, my plans are to take the studio on the road and talk to innovators around the country, see what people are working on, and find those interesting innovators in the non-obvious places. If you've got an innovator that's doing something really interesting that you think, one, should be a guest on the show, or two, could be somebody we want to do a visit where we actually do an expanded show with video and all that on a location here in US and Canada, just drop me a note, phil@killerinnovations.com. Today, we have a new guest. As you know, over the last couple of weeks, I've been doing some solo shows around out-of-the-box thinking, inside-the-box thinking, brainstorming within constraints, those kinds of topics. So it's been a little while since we've had a guest. We've got a guest in today's show, and this guest, though, is applying innovation to an industry that may not be obvious, would be one that you would think that AI could be applied to. So before I kind of blow the whole story, let me bring the guest in. The guest is Micah Hollingworth, who's the CEO and co-founder of Broadway.ai. So Micah, thanks for joining us here on Killer Innovations.
Thank you for having me.
So, Micah, give us a little bit of background. What's your history up to the point where you got involved with this idea on applying AI to, well, obviously with the name of your company being Broadway. But before we get into that, give us some background. Give us some context on yourself.
Sure. I'm about as far afield from a technologist as one could start from. So I grew up in rural Western Massachusetts and very early caught the theater bug. So I was a theater kid. I was a performer, big fish, small pond kind of scenario, right? Because it's very rural. And I ended up going to UMass Amherst, which had a total opposite experience, right? Huge campus, 25,000 students. But what I didn't know is that was setting me on my path for entrepreneurship and eventually into the technology field. Because the program itself wasn't focused on performance necessarily, although that was, of course, the driving component as a 18-year-old in terms of why you're there and what you're doing. But it was much more a generalist approach where from soup to nuts, you were learning everything that you need to do in order to put on a show. And as I've come to understand now in my late 40s, putting on a show, right, mounting a show at any level or any scale is very much like starting your own startup, right? You've got your initial idea, you're raising your capital, and then you're building it from soup to nuts, trying to find that audience that will come and pay to see it, right? So it's interesting how those worlds have kind of meshed together for me.
Well, it's also interesting because I use kind of, and I have some familiarity with Hollywood. When I was CTO at HP, I had responsibility for all the studios, so Warner Brothers and Sony Pictures and DreamWorks, etc. And what I always found interesting in that kind of entertainment segment is literally, as you said, it's a startup. You got to bring all the skill sets together. You put it on, whether you're doing a film or a stage production or whatever, and then when it's done, everybody just kind of goes away. And then the next production, everybody comes back together again. So it's kind of this, I've told the story 1,000 times. I did 13 startups before I got my first IPO, right? So, didn't work, tried. But in fact, in the movie industry, that's kind of like expected, right? You're going to be on a bunch of films or a bunch of stage plays or put on a lot of productions. And one play you may be playing this role, but as you get your experience, you take on different roles. But it's really that ability to build a team, execute, and then the team just kind of goes away and goes on to something else.
Yeah, very much. And unfortunately for the commercial theater world, the success rate is about the same as well, right? It's a lot of work for a crapshoot, right?
Yeah.
So the how you work together as a team is important because that the relationships and the team, what the teamwork develops for that particular show, even if that one doesn't work pan out to be the huge success that you're hoping for, as you say, those teams come together or reassemble in different ways, and you never know what the next project will be and what how that outcome for that is determined.
Yeah, and well, and it's and everybody always asks about, is there some secret formula to success, right? Well, I said if there was some secret formula, everybody would be applying it and everybody would be billionaires. But the reality is you may think you know what, in your case, what the audience would really react to, but until you put it on and you see the reaction, you don't know. Same thing in the tech world. I get I got shelves in here of products that I built that, did a nosedive, and I was sure
Mm.
that product was going to be a big win. I had Peter Guber on the show, right? So he's the chairman and CEO for Mandalay Entertainment. He's the former CEO for Sony Pictures. He owns the Golden State Warriors now. Um, and I asked him the same question. I said, because he was the producer on Batman, with the restart of the Batman series, right? And I'm like, so Peter, are there things that shows that you would have swore would have been big wins that just totally flopped? He looks at me, and goes, "That's Hollywood," and that's what it is. Because you just don't know until you do it.
Yeah. Yeah, if you look at the biggest success that arguably the commercial theaters ever had in Hamilton, if someone had told you 6 years ago, regardless of the pedigree, I mean, Lynn and the entire creative team, they're all Tony Award winners, so there clearly was a high level of talent. But if someone had just pitched you in an elevator in 2 sentences, oh, it's a rap musical about Alexander Hamilton, right? Most people would have not even considered uh, asking follow-up questions, let alone investing in the show. Yet here we are, right? So you don't know. It is very much a crapshoot of trying to catch lightning in a bottle.
Well, and it is, and the problem is when people have had success, like whether with winning a Tony or an Emmy or an Oscar or whatever, then people go, "Oh, they figured it out." So, therefore, if I team up with them, I'm guaranteed of a success. And that isn't even right. Doesn't Look, I've had a lot of award-winning products, and I've had a lot of flops after I had award-winning products. Right? You just got to get comfortable with the fact that life is one big experiment.
Yes, finding, accepting, and being comfortable in uncertainty is kind of key.
Yeah.
Which, frankly, is I don't know that anybody ever masters it. You just figure out how to get better at it over time.
Well, that and it's like a friend of mine was been very involved with Broadway theater, and I think it's a sister-in-law is a big producer on Broadway, and so it works out. I get decent tickets when Broadway's open. I can get decent tickets. But there's
Sure.
shows that I've been to, like a couple shows on opening night, where I thought, man, this thing is going to be great. 2 weeks
Yeah.
later, it's closed, and I'm
Oh,
like, okay, am I like such a what happened, right? Because I thought the show was fantastic. In 2 weeks, it's gone. It is, but it's like a startup. You think the startup's going to make it, and
mhm.
it's gonna be highly successful, and poof, all of a sudden overnight it's gone.
Yeah.
The issue is the stress that those types of activities cause, right? Because people, I can only imagine the amount of emotional investment that performers and producers and directors and all that have to put into a production. All that emotional investment, and then to have it, boom, instantly just kind of not succeed.
And uh, perhaps unlike the startup world in some ways, you don't get as much runway in that in the commercial theater and in the Broadway space in particular or the West End. You essentially have 8 to 10 weeks to get momentum and get your traction going, or you're going to have a very long, difficult slog ahead of you. So thankfully, at least in this tech space, I feel like there is a longer window, or you can continue to innovate or adapt or tweak what you're doing to have potentially a better outcome.
Right,
It's not all or nothing
right.
as it is in that space often.
Well, that and it's not all or nothing because you've got multiple channels to sell into versus you're selling
Sure.
one product to one very
Yep.
specific channel. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Micah Hollingworth, CEO, co-founder of Broadway AI. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break. Well, welcome back to Innovations. Let's continue our conversation with Micah Hollingworth at Broadway AI. So, Micah, as we were talking in the earlier part of the show, talking about the whole theater experience, I gotta share this story with you. Albeit I like certain shows, my wife is an absolute theater nut. So every time I'm in New York or London, she goes with me. She loves to go to the theater, but she always tells her friends the story of me falling asleep in New York in Phantom of the Opera and snoring so loudly that she had to jar me awake because I was disturbing people in the theater. Because I like theater, but it's not as big of a thing as it is for my wife. But there's been a lot of I'm amazed at shows like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. I love that show. I love the special effects. Cirque du Soleil. My son and I are big Cirque du Soleil fans. But I know the theater is always looking for how do you step up that experience? How do you differentiate the experience? So talk us about what Broadway and live events, what types of things are they looking at to kind of differentiate what they do compared to maybe other kinds of events and activities?
Sure. So before I do that, first though, I just have to say, because you've mentioned Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, did you see that on Broadway? Did you
Yes.
see? So I was the general manager of that theater when you were there seeing that show.
Oh,
So back
wow.
in, what is that, 2005? I ran that theater when you were there to see the show,
And I
and
had
you,
it was my wife and I and my three kids. Were
yeah,
were
yeah, of course,
were
right.
all were all with us. They're now adults with their own kids, but
And
um
that was
but
15 years ago. So
yeah, that
yeah,
was that was one of our family's favorite Broadway shows was Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and the car coming out,
yeah.
over the theater, and the special effects were just amazing. I just love Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Yeah, it was very cutting edge at the time. That huge electronic arm and a lot of different effects had to go into it to hide that in order to make that effect really work.
Yep,
But that experience that you mentioned, right? How that had stayed with you. That's the real power of what commercial theater is, right?
right.
That experience that live, especially with loved ones, memories that last, right?
Yep,
That make you compel you to want to come back again.
yep,
Uh, so when the industry itself looks at how can we innovate, we're trying to find ways to make um, the pathway into that easier, right?
mhm,
Because we're stuck in many ways with our circumstances that are unchangeable, right? You have some buildings approaching 100 years old. You have limited physical space. There's limited things you can do, even with innovation within the theater space. So it becomes all around the experience that the consumer has coming in, seeing the show, and after the show. How do we deepen that? How do we make that even more powerful so that for the fan, they're willing to accept, okay, I'm going to have to wait in lines to get into the theater. Okay, I'm at intermission, I'm probably going to have to wait in line at the restroom. Unlike my favorite sports team, I can't get the premium box seat where it's just me and my four friends in this really super deluxe, amped out suite setting. Like those things we just don't have and never will. So how can we improve upon all the other touch points in the experience to make it easier, to make it more satisfying, to make it more lasting? Is kind of the focus or the industry goal for sure.
yeah, and I think you bring up a good point, right? Because there's a lot of competition for live events, right? It's attention span, right? People only have, so many hours in a day, right? So they're prioritizing where they're going to spend both their dollars, but more importantly, how they select their time. And how do
Mhm.
you make it such that the friction and the annoyances of engaging in live events, right? I
Yep.
do. I'm not a musician, but I love live concerts and jazz festivals and those kinds of things. But the challenge of traveling and getting there and getting in and parking and all those kinds of things. Just sometimes you just won't go back to another event, not because you don't want the event, but pain of getting there.
hmm Yeah, that's right. And also with that attention you speak of, it's also split amongst many different channels. So you have to be where your fans are. It's not just as simple as putting up a website and throwing a bunch of SEO money behind your website to try to drive traffic. You actually need to be where the fan base is, and
Right.
that's consolidated across 4 or 5 different of the major tech player channels. But how can you be there? How can you make that experience appropriate for where they are and seamless in that way in terms of engaging with the show and then potentially purchasing tickets?
Right. And so talk about, you know, quickly here, what's the problem that Broadway AI is trying to solve then in trying to, change and differentiate the live events experience?
Well, the way that marketplace is set up in particular is somewhat unique in that the shows aren't selling their tickets directly, right? They're actually renting a property, unlike a sports team that may own the stadium that they're in, right? So they're a renter. So whatever ticketing system they're in, to a certain extent, depending upon what data is being passed through to them, they're always at arm's length to their consumer in some way, shape, or form. So for us, it was about trying to find a way to uh, clarify or clean up the data from their consumers so that it is one to one. So I know what you're looking for, what you're interested in about the show. And now I can across a wide range of engagements start to predict, oh well, you're interested in tickets. Not only are you interested in tickets, you're interested in this price point. Here's this price point, right? So you can start to really in a customized, personalized way, handhold the consumer all the way through the discovery and into the sales funnel, and then out on the other side um, with the solution we provide.
And in this case, is it more than just a recommendation engine? Because that's kind of when people think about like Amazon, you buy this book and they go, oh, well, you might like this book, right? But
Right.
you're talking about more than just that.
We are in that case, Amazon's its own established brand and is trying to keep you continuing to do sales with them. We're entirely white label, so we're a solution for our partner. So it's really about the for our client being able to customize and maximize the opportunity for them and them alone,
And
so that
who's the
they can get all
partner?
this.
Is the partner the theater, the partner of the show, the partner of the ticket
It,
distributor?
so it it depends on the it depends upon the relationship, but in most cases, it's the event
Okay,
producer, the show,
okay,
and we have done API integrations with the ticketing platform so that we're able to do the search of real-time inventory and serve up and help the primary provider complete the sale of tickets. So we're not a ticket reseller, we're not a broker, we're not trying to be the one to sell you the ticket. We're just trying to facilitate the sale, and in doing so, generating a long tail of data for the event producer to say, okay, here's what most people are looking for. Here's my best conversion rates. Here, all the way down that funnel.
perfect. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to dig in a little bit more on Broadway AI and continue our conversation with Micah Hollingworth. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back after this quick commercial break. Welcome back to Killer Innovations. We're continuing our conversations with Micah Hollingworth with Broadway AI. So, Micah, give us a little bit of background on Broadway AI. How did it come about, and what's been that experience of identifying the problem, but then actually being an entrepreneur in the tech field, which is, it probably was an interesting experience for you given your background.
Yes, not a place I ever thought I would end up, but in hindsight, it makes sense now. My previous or my last kind of employment circumstance was with Jujamson Theaters. I was a VP of company operations there for a little over 7 years. And as such, a lot of the biz dev things came across my desk, and I was always somebody that was noodling around on the side. Uh, so I met a company called Satisfy Labs, was introduced to them. They came in and pitched us an idea for their AI product, which was really for large arenas. The demo they did for us was actually something they put together for the Oklahoma City Thunder. So specific to that arena, you could engage with their chat tool, which would know where you were located within the venue based on location services, and ask an endless variety of questions related to your location to help you in anything from where's the nearest Heineken or restroom, right? All the way up to escalating to live help if you had an emergency, a circumstance that required assistance immediately. It was compelling, and the way they showed us the underneath in terms of the backbone of the technology was very, very interesting. But for a Broadway venue, for us specifically, they're never more than 2,000 seats, and there's always an exit clearly lit and or an usher almost within arm's reach because the venues are so small. So there wasn't really a use case for us in that circumstance. But it was my now partner, John Scott, who was in the room with me, a coworker, looked across the table at me and said, well, hold on, but what if we took this a similar approach, but used it to sell tickets? And for me, at least, I'm kind of notorious for having a light bulb idea and then running about 20 miles ahead, right? You just kind of fast forward all the progressions of it. And in my mind, I could immediately see it, right? The benefit of moving the box office window, the analog experience, and putting it anywhere digitally, right? So it's an easy, quick description to someone new to that technology. And frankly, off to the races we were, right? Then it was about, would there be enough support from them or interest from the market? Would the major players, meaning the venue owners and the ticketing systems, be willing for someone to come in and be a partner and do integrations in this way? So then it became all about the legwork to see if it was something that we could put together.
So this noodling, then how did you get from the light bulb moment to now saying we're going to set up a separate company and we're going to go build this thing with this other? I'm assuming you're partnered with this other company then that's providing the AI elements to it then.
Yeah. So
And
then,
how did that all come together?
well, it took some time, right? At least initially, first we brought it up internally, right? We brought it directly to our owner, Jordan Roth, to say, hey, would this be something that you were interested in? And after some consideration, he said, the passion I see with you on this, you should go do it. Go chase this down. You should take this opportunity. You should take this risk. He was very supportive. So that was step one. Then step two was figuring out long term, as much as we connected with the Satisfy team, what they were necessarily demonstrating or providing wasn't exclusive or so unique that there wouldn't be other vendors that necessarily you could go and have a conversation with and potentially explore a partnership with. So we continued to talk through what a relationship and a partnership with them would look like. And ultimately what it led to was that we went out and raised funds to launch our own company in this vertical, but in taking a portion of that funds and investing them in Satisfy to help boost the engineering and the dev team and the support there, as well as solidify the long-term relationship with our tech in terms of owning your future rather than working with a vendor and potentially having issues down the road.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's always the risk, right? Be
Yeah,
careful. Be careful who you partner with,
correct.
because you got to be able to control your own destiny.
Yes.
You
Yeah. So it was that was about a year process, all told, a little bit over, with um, easily a half dozen moments. If you had pulled me aside, I would say it's absolutely not happening. right? It's just ups and downs.
Right.
Some always in the same day, but sometimes in the same hour, right? You have to be really clear-eyed and steady, which I will only admit to being moderately successful at even to this day.
Well, you bring up a good point, right? Is what I refer to as innovation grit, right? Sometimes you just got to muscle through because,
Yeah.
if you've got the vision and you are, you've gone through it and you understand the need, you're passionate about it.
Mhm.
The innovation antibodies will come out of the woodwork just to do everything it can to distract you and get you off the plan, as much as
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah, it's a real continuing to circle back to the North Star, the mission statement, or
Right.
what you're really focused on is something that you have to really continually do on an daily, weekly, monthly basis, individually and also as a team.
So, question, you said it was about a year or so. Did that include the capital raise too?
It did. I in hindsight, I think we could have done the capital raise sooner if we had gone outside the industry. But we also took a strategic approach where the people, the individuals, that the companies that we thought would most benefit from the service itself are the ones we went to become our investors, so that they were engaged. A it was a great way early on to pressure test the idea to make sure that where we were going was a direction that they thought that they saw value in. And then once we had the totality of the business plan, getting buy-in and sign off from that same community was very important to know that we at least had our runway and opportunity to succeed. Then it was up to us to execute it.
Well, I think with though what you're pointing out though is there's a difference between smart money and money, right?
Mhm.
Money is just I'm going to write you a check because I think that I'm going to get some kind of a return. Smart
Right.
money is I'm invested in the segment already that you're wanting to sell into. So the ability to leverage that relationship is me both being validators and endorsers in addition to my money is a
Yeah.
different value component is part of the deal, right?
100%. And I, if my recommendation or my advice to anyone listening who's attempting to raise funds is always go after the smart money first,
Right.
right? You want that engaged partner. You want that support
Right.
right out of the gate.
How much did you raise?
We raised 1.5.
Wow. First
Yeah.
1.5 in the first round on a pretty novel idea in an industry that people don't typically think of, buying tickets. How much innovation room is there really left in the ticket buying experience, right?
Yes, I think to our good fortune, that market is one that is very familiar with extreme risk, right? In terms of investing in a Broadway show is probably the riskiest trend that you can make, right? And so we were really thoughtful in terms of how we structured the raise itself in the units, so that the amounts that we were looking for were even across the board amongst the major players, and then also that their participation was something that was below what they would normally consider even as a courtesy investment in one of a larger show, right? So
Yeah.
we structured it to make it as easy and as low risk in a very high risk environment as you could.
Well, it's interesting because the way you structure, and this is something I think a lot of entrepreneurs can learn from. You structure the funding to look like they're funding a show, which they're used to doing. So it wasn't foreign to them. You adapted it to make it feel, taste, smell like they're funding a show at that
Oh,
same kind of level of pain. And that's an interesting, adapting to the psychology of your both your customer, but also your investor. That's brilliant. That's very, very good. Very clever.
yeah, we since the technology was so foreign and the idea was so unique or new, we tried to make everything else feel very, very familiar and safe,
Right.
so that they felt had great comfort in what we were trying to do.
Perfect. We're gonna take another quick commercial break. When we come back, I'm gonna ask Micah to share his advice. What advice would he give himself back when he was starting down this path? So don't go anywhere. We're gonna be right back after this quick commercial break. Welcome back to Killer Innovations. As we wrap up today's show, continue our conversation with Micah Hollingworth from Broadway AI. So, Micah, one question I always like to ask as part of the show is what advice, if you could have gone back, given everything you've learned, all the scars of having gone through this process of starting a tech company, if you could go back to the beginning, back to that meeting where this company came in and was pitching you and you got the light bulb, what piece or what pieces of advice do you wish you had known, or what advice would you give yourself? Could you go back in time?
Um, First and foremost, that you have to be patient. That this any good idea will take time to put together, to really flush out, to pressure test, to get feedback, and then to execute. And I'm notoriously impatient, so it's a constant battle. um, but I think it's. I saw a recent quote from Bill Gates. I'm sure it's from years back, but where he says to sum it up, you'll assume that you'll get more done in a year, but you'll underestimate what you can get done in 3 years, right? And that rings very true to me, especially in the software world, where the biggest lesson I've learned in that way is that you're never done. Even when you do a release and you put it out, you're immediately on to what additional features, bugs, what other things need to be worked on and added to it. It's an endless process, and that if you had asked me before going down this road, I probably would have nodded my head and said, "Oh yeah, yeah, sure, I get it." But now I really get it, and that endless work that needs to get done requires a really long-term focus and a lot of patience to get there.
Yeah. And that's and it's actually, one of the things that I think a lot of innovators, have to get comfortable with. And it doesn't matter whether it's tech or not, right?
Yeah.
As innovators, we can see the end result. We tend to be that visionary, and I kind of know what it is I think is really going to be that killer idea. The
Mhm.
path to get there, though, never a straight line.
Never, absolutely never.
um, give me a little context of, because the fact is you didn't come from a tech background. So
Mhm.
how did you get comfortable with the tech side of being an entrepreneur?
Um, well, have learned over time that I've always been I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit. So that helps. From the tech side of things, with the generalist background, I'm more than willing to get in there and to learn enough to be potentially dangerous, but I'm still not the one who's going to be doing code or building new features in that way,
Right,
right? For me, that means working with people who are much smarter than me,
right.
and that starts with my partner John Scott, and then that team over at Satisfy Labs. And so the other piece of advice is if you don't think that that you are working with people who are smarter with you, then you are probably not working with the right people.
Right.
Like, continually stretch and work with people who are going to challenge you to keep up.
I think that's an important part, right? We also tend to, you know, we overlook the importance of partners, right? But if you
Mhm.
look at any of the big success wins, right? You got, Bill Gates, Paul Allen, you've got Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, you know, company I was with, Hewlett Packard, right? Bill Hewlett and David Packard, right? Even Elon will tell you that there's been some key partners that have come alongside him that enabled him. He may be the guy that everybody looks to, but Elon would be the one to tell you that importance of partners and importance of that team that you build up, and being, very clear about, like you said, hire people smarter than you. That's how you move the ball down the field.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, Micah, if people want to keep track of what's going on at Broadway AI, what's the best way for them to keep up with what you're doing?
Sure, all the usual places, right? So they can come to our website, which is Broadway, but it's .ai instead of AY, or they can find me at LinkedIn at Micah.Hollingworth, or of course Twitter as well.
Okay, and we're going to have all those links up at the show notes up at killerinnovations.com. So if you're driving your car, you don't have to pull a pin out right now and try to remember all of those URLs to everything. So just remember, when you do get to your destination, just hop on over to killerinnovations.com, and you can check out the show notes, and we'll have all the links out to Micah. And hey, Micah, I just want to thank you very much for taking the time out of your schedule to join us here on Kill Innovations and sharing your innovation story around Broadway AI.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. And to your listeners, stay at it. You can make it happen.
Thanks. So as we wrap up today's show, just want to give you a couple of quick updates. As you know, we're doing more and more video for the show, given that I'm in the studio more often now with COVID. So you want to hop on over to YouTube. You can also follow me over on Twitch. When I do the show, typically I'll also Twitch stream it at the same time. So if you want to see, and it gives you a little bit of a different perspective, because I actually use one of the cameras from behind, so you can actually see the production and how the show all comes together as we go through and do the recording. So you can just go over to twitch.com/PhilMcKinney, and you can see the most recent video, and put yourself on, subscribe, notify, and you'll get notified every time we are recording here in the studio, and you can see the production and see how it's all made to happen. Also, again, if you have a guest suggestion, someone who you think would be a great guest on the show, just drop me a note, phil@killerinnovations.com. We're always looking for interesting innovation stories. Also, we are doing more and more of the workshops virtually. Many of you, we've done workshops for your firms live and in person, but there are virtual options. The most popular one is disruptive ideation. So you go over to disruptiveideation.com, check that out, and click the button, put in your information, and the team will reach out to you and see how we might be able to help you kickstart your own innovation efforts inside of your organization. As we wrap up today's show, appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to listen and follow us, subscribe wherever you get your favorite podcasts, and love to hear any feedback. Let us know if there's suggestions or ideas. With that, we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.